Hey guys, welcome back to The Readers. I hope you're having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is an entitled People Story. Let me tell you about the day I got fired from my own company. Yeah, you read that right. My own company. I founded this logistics tech firm about 8 years ago. Started in my garage with nothing but some coding skills and a vision for revolutionizing supply chain management. The company grew fast, probably faster than I was ready for. By year 3, we had clients across the country, and I was drowning in meetings about quarterly projections and board presentations. That's when I made what seemed like a smart decision at the time. I stepped back from day-to-day operations and hired a CEO to handle the business side while I focused on what I actually loved, research and development. I kept majority ownership naturally, but I wanted to stay behind the scenes and just create cool tech. The CEO I hired was great. We had worked together before, and I trusted him completely. For years, everything ran smoothly. The company kept growing, I kept innovating, and everyone was happy. But about 6 months ago, I started hearing concerning rumors. Former employees were posting reviews online about a toxic work environment in certain departments. Current employees were reaching out to me directly, which was unusual. They were complaining about a new manager who had been brought in to oversee the analytics division. Initially, I tried to handle it through normal channels. I talked to the CEO, who assured me he would look into it, but the complaints kept coming. People were quitting, and these were good people, talented people we couldn't afford to lose. That's when I decided to go undercover in my own company. I know how it sounds, but I had to see what was happening firsthand. The CEO knew what I was doing, of course, but we agreed to keep it between us. I would pose as a new hire in the analytics department, the one getting all the complaints. I showed up on Monday morning wearing my oldest hoodie and carrying my beat-up coffee mug from college. This thing was seriously ancient, with a logo from some tech conference that probably happened before half our employees were born. I figured it would help me blend in with the regular staff instead of looking like management material. The office had changed a lot since I had been there regularly. Everything was sleeker now, all glass and chrome. My old hoodie and ratty mug definitely stood out against the polished aesthetic. I was introduced as a new senior analyst. The hiring paperwork had been handled quietly by HR, who thought I was just a consultant the CEO had brought in for a special project. Only a handful of people knew who I really was. That's when I met her. Brenda. Brenda was everything the employee complaints had suggested and worse. She swept into the office that first morning wearing shoes that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent, talking loudly on her phone about some brunch she had planned for the weekend. The first thing she did was look me up and down with obvious disgust. "You must be the new analyst," she said, still not bothering to end her phone call. She held up one perfectly manicured finger to indicate I should wait while she finished discussing bottomless mimosas with whoever was on the other end. When she finally hung up, she gestured vaguely at my appearance. "I'm going to need you to understand that we have certain standards here. This is a professional environment. We represent a brand." I looked down at my hoodie. Sure, it was old, but it was clean, and my jeans were perfectly appropriate for an analyst role. "I understand," I said simply. "Good, we'll discuss your wardrobe expectations later. Right now, we need to talk about my vision for this department." She launched into this speech about synergy and optimization and leveraging core competencies. It was like listening to a business school textbook that had come to life and learned to walk in expensive shoes. The real kicker came when she started explaining our proprietary logistics algorithm. This was the software I had literally created from scratch in my garage. She was getting the terminology completely wrong. As you can see, our dynamic routing optimization uses advanced heuristic methodologies to maximize efficiency coefficients, she said, gesturing at a flowchart someone had clearly prepared for her. I couldn't help myself. Actually, it's based on machine learning clustering with real-time adaptive parameters. The look she gave me could have frozen hell over. "Excuse me?" "The algorithm, it's not heuristic-based, it's machine learning. The parameters adapt in real time based on traffic patterns, weather data, and historical delivery performance." She stared at me for a long moment. "I think I know how our own systems work." "Of course. I was just clarifying the technical details." The glare she shot me right then should have been my first warning about how this was going to go. Over the next 2 weeks, I got a front row seat to the Brenda show. She held what she called Power Monday meetings every week, where she would stand at the front of the conference room and lecture everyone about efficiency and brand alignment and corporate culture. During my second Power Monday, she announced something called an efficiency purge. "I've been analyzing this department's performance metrics," she declared, clicking through a PowerPoint presentation that looked like it had been designed by someone who thought more colors meant more professional. "And I've identified several areas where we can optimize our human resources. Everyone in the room tensed up. People were exchanging worried glances. Some team members are not meeting the energy standards I expect. Some people don't seem to understand that when you work here, you're not just an employee, you're a brand ambassador. Her eyes landed on me. Some people seem to think that showing up in pajamas and drinking from garage sale mugs is acceptable professional behavior. A few people turned to look at me. I was wearing khakis and a button-down shirt, which was about as dressed up as anyone else in the room. But whatever. I need team members who radiate success, who look like the premium service we provide to our clients. She kept talking, but I was mostly tuning her out and watching my coworkers' faces. These were good people, smart people who cared about their work, and they all looked miserable. After the meeting, I started paying closer attention to how Brenda operated. I watched her berate a junior analyst for using the wrong font in a report. I saw her take credit for successful projects that other people had worked on for months. I watched her schedule working lunches at expensive restaurants while making everyone else eat at their desks. The final straw came during my third week there. There was this assistant, Sarah, who had been with the company for 2 years. She was smart, hardworking, and knew the systems better than anyone. She was also about 6 months pregnant. One morning, Sarah mentioned to Brenda that she might need to leave early for a doctor's appointment. "This is exactly what I'm talking about," Brenda announced to the entire office. "Personal issues affecting professional commitment. This is why I'm implementing the new accountability standards." Sarah looked mortified. "I'm sorry, I can reschedule if needed. The damage is already done. This kind of attitude is contagious." I watched Sarah's face crumble and something inside me snapped, but I held it together. I had to see how far this would go. 2 days later, Brenda called me into her office. It was one of those glass-walled conference rooms where everyone in the office could see what was happening inside. She had clearly chosen it on purpose. She had a folder sitting on the table in front of her. I could see it was labeled Termination Documentation. "Sit down," she said, without looking up from whatever she was reading on her phone. I sat. "This isn't working out," she said, finally making eye contact. "You don't fit the culture we're building here." "Can you be more specific about the performance issues?" "It's not about performance. It's about fit. You don't look like someone who belongs in a premium organization. You dress like you're going to community college. You ask too many questions. You correct me in meetings." "I was just trying to provide accurate technical information." "That's exactly what I mean. You think you know better than management. That kind of attitude is toxic." She opened the folder and slid a document across the table. "I'm terminating your employment effective immediately." I looked at the paperwork. It was thorough. I had to give her that. She had documented every interaction we'd had, characterizing my questions as insubordination and my corrections as disrespectful behavior. "Are you sure you want to do this without consulting the board?" I asked. She actually laughed. "The board chose me to clean up this department. They trust my judgment completely. I have full authority to make personnel decisions." "The board?" "That's right. They brought me in specifically because they knew tough decisions needed to be made. I'm not afraid to scrape the barnacles off the hull so this ship can sail faster." She was clearly proud of that metaphor. "You're calling me a barnacle?" "If the shoe fits, some people add value and some people are just dead weight that slows everyone else down." I stayed calm. Years of dealing with difficult clients and investors had taught me how to keep my emotions in check when people were being unreasonable. "I understand you've made your decision." "I have. Security will escort you to your desk so you can pack your belongings. I want you out of the building within 30 minutes. She stood up and walked to the door. Then she turned back with this smug smile. "Oh, and I'm taking a long lunch to celebrate. When you're running a tight ship, you have to reward yourself for making the hard choices." Security showed up at my desk 5 minutes later. 2 guards, both looking uncomfortable with the situation. One of them I recognized. He had worked here for years. "Hey, Tom," I said to the guard I knew. "Hey," he replied quietly. "Sorry about this." "It's fine. Just doing your job." I packed my stuff slowly. The entire office was watching. Some people looked sympathetic. Others just seemed glad it wasn't them getting walked out. I put my ancient coffee mug in the box last, making sure everyone could see it. As I was walking toward the elevator, I heard Brenda on the phone with someone. "Just cleaned house," she was saying. "Got rid of the dead weight. I'm thinking we celebrate with champagne and oysters at that new place downtown." The elevator doors closed, and I rode down to the parking garage. Once I was in my car, I pulled out my phone and sent a text message to the CEO. "Emergency board meeting, conference room A in 10 minutes. The situation is worse than we thought." Then I drove back up to the executive parking level. The executive floor was completely different from the rest of the building. This was where I usually worked when I was in the office, back when I was more involved in daily operations. My research lab was up here, along with the boardroom and the CEO's office. I still had my key card for this level, obviously. I walked into the boardroom in the same clothes I had been fired in. My old hoodie, my ratty jeans, and my coffee mug in a cardboard box. The CEO was already there, along with the 2 other board members who were local. The rest would be joining by video call. "How bad is it?" the CEO asked as soon as I walked in. I set the cardboard box on the conference table. "Pretty bad. She just fired me for not fitting the brand aesthetic." "She fired you? She actually fired you?" 30 minutes ago, called me a barnacle that was slowing down her ship. One of the board members started laughing. "She called you a barnacle? That's not even the worst part. I've been watching her for 3 weeks. She's creating a hostile work environment, taking credit for other people's work, and I think she's been skimming from the travel budget." I opened my laptop and pulled up the folder I had been building during my time undercover. I documented everything. She fired Sarah for asking to leave early for a prenatal appointment. She's been padding her expense reports, and she's been telling clients that the proprietary software was her idea. "Our software, the system you developed?" "That's the one. She's been taking full credit in client presentations." The CEO rubbed his forehead. "I knew there were problems, but I had no idea it was this bad. There's more. She's been systematically pushing out anyone who challenges her. 3 of our best analysts have quit in the past month, and 2 more are actively job hunting." I clicked through the documentation I had gathered, screenshots of inappropriate messages, records of her expense claims, testimonials from employees who had reached out to me directly. She told me the board gave her full authority to make personnel decisions. The board never said that. I never said that. I know, but she believes it, and she's acting accordingly. We spent the next 20 minutes going through everything I had collected. The evidence was damning. Not just poor management, but potential legal issues around the hostile work environment she was creating. "What do you want to do?" the CEO asked. "I want her gone. Today. And I want Sarah promoted to interim department manager with a substantial raise. Done. And I want to be there when security escorts Brenda out. Also, done." We called down to security and HR. The plan was simple. Brenda would be called to the boardroom for what she would think was a celebration of her efficiency initiative. Instead, she would find out exactly who she had been calling a barnacle. While we were waiting, the CEO filled me in on some additional details I hadn't uncovered during my undercover work. Apparently, Brenda had been telling people she was being considered for a VP position. She had been hinting to clients that she might be taking over more responsibility for the company's strategic direction. She actually asked me last week about getting business cards with executive manager as her title instead of department manager, the CEO said. "Did you approve it?" I told her we'd discuss it after her performance review next month. 20 minutes later, my phone buzzed with a text from Tom, the security guard. "She's back from lunch. Should we bring her up?" "Give us 5 minutes," I replied. I looked around the boardroom. The CEO was at his usual spot at one end of the long table. The 2 local board members were sitting on one side. I took my seat at the head of the table. It felt good to be back where I belonged. "Send her up," I told security. We could hear her coming down the hallway. She was talking loudly on her phone again, probably giving someone a play-by-play of her expensive lunch. The conference room door opened and Brenda walked in without knocking. "You wanted to see me?" she started to say. Then she stopped dead. She was looking right at me, sitting at the head of the boardroom table in my old hoodie, with my cardboard box of belongings next to me. "What is he doing here?" she demanded, pointing at me. The CEO stood up. "Brenda, I'd like you to meet our majority shareholder and founder." The color drained from her face. "I don't understand." "The barnacle you fired this morning? He owns 51% of this company." She stood there for a long moment, opening and closing her mouth like a fish. "That's impossible. He's just an analyst. He doesn't even dress professionally." "He's been working undercover in your department for 3 weeks, documenting the hostile work environment you've created." I opened my laptop and turned it toward her. "Want to see the evidence?" She looked at the screen, then back at me, then at the CEO. "This is a mistake. I've been improving efficiency. I've been making the tough decisions nobody else was willing to make. You fired a pregnant employee for asking to leave early for a doctor's appointment. That's not what happened. We have witnesses and recordings." That was a bluff, but she didn't know that. "You've been falsifying expense reports." "Those were legitimate business expenses. $300 lunches? $500 dinners? Every single day? I was entertaining clients." "Which clients?" "We called them." None of them had lunch with you." She was starting to panic now. I could see it in her eyes. "You can't do this. I have a contract. I have rights." I pulled out a copy of her employment agreement. "According to the contract you signed, employment is at will. Either party can terminate the relationship at any time for any reason. But I'm the one who implemented that policy." "I know. It was your idea. Funny how that works out." Security appeared at the door, Tom and his partner, both looking professional but serious. "Ma'am, we need you to come with us to clear out your office." "This isn't over," Brenda said, looking directly at me. "I'll sue. This is wrongful termination." "Actually," the CEO interjected, "termination for cause, creating a hostile work environment, falsifying expense reports, and misrepresenting your authority to clients. Our legal team will be in touch." As security escorted her toward the door, she turned back one more time. "I made this department more efficient than it's ever been. You fired 3 of our best people and drove away 2 more. Efficiency isn't just about cutting costs, it's about getting results." The door closed behind her, and the room was quiet for a moment. "Well," said one of the board members, "that was dramatic." I picked up my coffee mug from the cardboard box. "I'm keeping this on my desk as a reminder." "A reminder of what?" "That you never know who's watching, and that if you're going to call someone a barnacle, you might want to make sure they don't own the ship." An hour later, I was back in my research lab, setting up my workspace. The cardboard box sat on my desk, and I had unpacked everything except the coffee mug. That stayed exactly where everyone could see it. The CEO knocked on my door. "Sarah wants to know if she can schedule a meeting with you next week to discuss the department reorganization." "Tell her congratulations on the promotion first, and yes, absolutely. What about Brenda's replacement? Let's promote from within. Someone who already knows the systems and cares about the work. Someone who won't call you a barnacle? That would be nice." 2 days later, I got an email from Sarah with a detailed proposal for restructuring the analytics department. It was thorough, thoughtful, and showed a deep understanding of both the technical requirements and the team dynamics. At the bottom, she had added a personal note. "Thank you for what you did, not just for me, but for everyone. We all knew something was wrong, but we didn't know how to fix it." That afternoon, I walked through the analytics department. People were actually smiling. There was conversation happening. The atmosphere was completely different. Tom from security stopped by my lab around closing time. "Heard you're keeping the mug," he said. "That's right. Good. It's a good reminder that things aren't always what they seem." Exactly. As it turned out, Brenda did try to sue for wrongful termination. Her lawyer dropped the case after reviewing the evidence we had collected. Apparently, even with an expensive legal team, it's hard to argue that firing someone for asking for prenatal care is a legitimate business decision. The last I heard, she was working for some consulting firm downtown, probably telling them how she transformed a logistics company through efficiency optimization. Meanwhile, Sarah has been doing an outstanding job running the department. Employee satisfaction is up, productivity is up, and we haven't lost a single person since the leadership change. I still wear my old hoodie to work sometimes, and I definitely still use that ancient coffee mug. It sits on my desk in the research lab, a daily reminder that you should never underestimate the barnacles, because sometimes the barnacle owns the whole damn ship. The next one is a malicious compliance story. In my 20s, I spent a little over 5 years working for an oil and gas well service company. It was a 15 on, 6 off rotation. The first 4 years was at a small shop roughly 7 hours from home, at which point I transferred to a much busier shop that was only a few hours from home. 5 years seems like peanuts in the working world, but in this particular line of work, it was a long time. Decent job security as far as oil field work goes, but the pay was marginal at best, so turnover was high. At 5 years, I was the most experienced hand in our shop. The new shop was definitely busier. The money was way better, and I managed to have my days off matched up with a supervisor whose way of doing things meshed perfectly with me. Everything else about the place, awful. My breaking point was being denied a day off with 2 days' notice to attend a funeral for a good friend who was lost to some health complications after a car accident. I was generally pretty understanding that in our line of work it could be difficult to always balance manpower, but the day I requested off passed with 4 other hands sitting around at the shop doing make-work projects to pass the day. Management couldn't be bothered to take a few minutes to see if they could make things work. It was easier to just say no. To that point in my employment there, I had been extremely flexible with helping out during manpower shortages. I had probably worked in excess of 100 days off and had only ever used 1 sick day. I thought a little reciprocity would have been nice. But I made up my mind. I'd fulfill my obligation to work 1 year at that shop, as to not have to pay back the $4K transfer bonus I'd received, and then it would be time to move on. I was only a few months off of that 1 year mark, so I started job shopping immediately and quickly set my sights on a mine that we regularly did work for that was close enough to home that I could commute on a daily basis. I made some inquiries with people I knew that were working there, and it seemed right up my alley. Not long after that, I updated my resume and sent it in. A few weeks later, I'm driving back from a job and get a voicemail from HR at the company I applied to. I called back as soon as I had a spare minute, and they were looking to have me come in for an interview 2 days later. My heart sank, knowing that was going to be a struggle. I talked with the HR lady, seeing if they had any other dates available, but it was explained to me that they only arrange one interview day once they have enough holes to fill in their crews to justify doing orientation with a group of new hires. She said she could put me as first call for the next round, but didn't know when that would be, and she said it would also be fairly short notice. In the end, I agreed to the interview appointment, not knowing how I was going to make it work. I immediately went to the assistant manager to ask for time off, as he was looking after dispatching duties that week. I told him something important came up at home that I really need to get dealt with. Without hesitation, he said, "No, we have a full board this week and need you here. Whatever it is, we'll have to wait for your days off." My first thought was that I was just going to call in sick and go to the job interview. The last thing I wanted to do was worry about being fired from a job I no longer want. Then I realized maybe there was another path forward and went to the job board. And there it was, exactly what I needed. A potentially week-long job for the company I was set to interview with, and the job was scheduled to start the next day. And none of the jobs had been assigned to crews yet. I filled my supervisor in with the circumstances and my plan, and he was on board with it. We went to the assistant manager and offered to take that job. He was delighted to have us volunteer, as not many crews cared to be away from home for a week, mainly being confined to a rig shack. Day 1 went smoothly, and we were done by early afternoon. I used the supervisor's truck and went home to get some interview-appropriate clothes. Day 2 we were running a bit behind, but we just barely got the job set up and our tools deployed into the well with enough time for me to grab a quick shower and change of clothes before again taking the supervisor's truck over to the administration building for my interview. Got a call the next week with an offer of a start date 2 weeks out. Starting wage was definitely lower than I was making, but they offered clearly defined progression that would have me easily equaling my current income in year 2 and well exceeding it by year 4. Benefits were better, and the schedule would give me twice as much time off. Went to give my manager 2 weeks' notice, and he asked where I was going and what I'd be making. He was appalled I'd leave for such a low starting wage. He asked what it would take to keep me. I told him, when a person takes a pay cut to leave, obviously that ship sailed long ago. The next one is an entitled people story, posting this about my friend Sai, who I'm currently caring for. This story isn't just his word. I've been helping him with paperwork and helped him go through the downloaded Instagram conversations, messages with the legal aid, emails between his ex-housemates and his disability advocate, etc. This is in Victoria, Australia. A rental bond is similar to an American deposit, what you pay when you move into a rental place. Sai has several physical disabilities and is on Centrelink. In October last year, Sai answered a housemate ad and moved in with an engaged couple, B. Colombo and Riley Pemberton. Both use they pronouns. C paid bond, deposit, and rent right away to B, and took a few weeks to hand in his lease forms. Sai keeps screenshots whenever he pays bond/rent/bills, and still has these. When he moved in, the couple told Sai they would be living there until July 2025, then told him February 2025, then the couple messaged him December 2024 that they were moving out in a month and had paid their rent until then. There was no way Sai could find new housemates on such short notice or afford rent by himself, so he was forced to also pay his rent until the move-out date and also moved out. He had to scramble to find a place in time and lived in a boarding house for a while that was unsuitable for his disabilities and is now living somewhere safe. B. Colombo and Riley Pemberton posted on social media they'd bought a house. The couple told Sai the real estate were being difficult and not giving the bond back. In our state, if the real estate or landlord don't return a tenant's bond, the tenants can apply for bond return via VCAT, Rental Tribunal. Sai suggested VCAT, and the couple said they were going to apply for one, but couldn't afford it. Sai said he'd pay for it because he desperately needed his bond money back to move out of the boarding house, but the couple told him he wasn't actually on the lease, so he couldn't do anything. In addition to buying a house, B. Colombo and Riley Pemberton were also posting about getting lip fillers and buying Labubus and pool tables for their new home bar while telling Sai they couldn't afford VCAT, cost about $70 AUD, less than a Labubu. From February to June, the couple told Cy they couldn't give him his bond back because they hadn't gotten their bond back from the real estate, and they weren't too stressed and too burnt out to do the VCAT paperwork. Riley Pemberton sent Cy a few $100 bond payments, which they told Cy were out of their own pocket, but those stopped in April. C offered to pay for the VCAT and help out with the paperwork to get the bond back from the real estate, but the couple kept making excuses. Cy asked if the couple wanted to meet up and they could all do the VCAT paperwork and submit it. Riley told Cy they would do that, but then said the two of them had a bad case of COVID. At the same time, B. Colombo was posting Instagram stories of them going out. Starting in May, C's health drastically declined. He has nerve damage in his lower back that causes difficulty walking, and the medication he has to take makes it hard for him to talk or have control of his hands. Me and a couple other people having been helping him with daily living stuff, and I've been helping him with paperwork, emails, appointments, etc. Riley Pemberton began getting hostile at Cy, telling Cy that they or B would send payments that never arrived, and when Cy would politely say he didn't receive them, Riley would go off that they had no money, and that they were paying Cy back out of pocket, even though the payment stopped months ago. Riley told Cy, "I'm at my wit's end, so don't push me." We have all the downloaded messages, and S was being polite, nothing to warrant that reaction. Despite having no money, the couple were both posting about new furniture they'd bought and renovations they were doing. In June, C told a social worker at the hospital he's receiving treatment at about the bond situation, and the social worker reported it. Cy had to give a report and download all the share house group conversations and his messages with B and Riley. His case was then referred to a community legal service who advised his disability advocate to send a demand letter for the rest of his money back. At this point, everyone thought B and Riley had gotten their bond money back from the rental agent. A VCAT is usually done 2 weeks after leaving a property, not 5 months, and claiming they were too stressed to do the paperwork to get their bond money back was bullshit, along with getting hostile at Cy whenever he asked about it. The real estate agency was contacted, and turns out B and Riley didn't get their bond back for rental arrears, because they weren't paying rent, which was news to Cy because he was paying rent to B. So B and Riley kept Cy's bond money, didn't lodge it or add Cy to the lease, and also kept his rent money and didn't pay rent. They didn't get their bond deposit back because of the rental arrears, then have been telling Cy for months they can't give his bond money back because they didn't get their bond money back from the real estate. They were lying to Cy about doing a VCAT. They knew they weren't getting their bond back. They were also misleading him by telling him they were paying him back his bond out of their own pocket, since his bond money went into their pockets, and they spent it. Additionally, B had told Cy messages that they claimed were from the real estate agent, and the REA said she never said those things. Cy's disability advocate sent B and Riley the demand letter via email. They replied back that Cy never cleaned. B. Colombo said he did nothing. Then, in a later email, claimed that Cy trashed the place before he left. Then days later, Riley claimed that they had talked to Cy about paying some maintenance costs and Cy had refused to pay them. The advocate knew they were lying and trying to muddy the waters and divert away from the bond situation, and the downloaded sharehouse messages contained conversations about Cy cleaning and doing chores and mowing. The conversations after they all moved out were about the bond, no mention of any cleaning Cy didn't do or anything he didn't pay for. Instead, as mentioned above, there was messages of Cy offering to pay for the VCAT so they could all get their bond money back. Later on, when Cy was read the emails, he confirmed that yes, he did clean and do chores, and that the conversations Riley talked about never happened. The couple don't seem to realize that bringing up irrelevant accusations when talking about the bond issue is incriminating, just like if a person is found murdered and everyone is trying to stick to the facts of the murder except for 2 people screaming that the deceased is the worst person ever and never cleaned and actually owed them money. That might be a bit suspicious. B. Colombo also said it was Cy's own fault he wasn't on the lease, which is bullshit because 1, regardless of whose fault, it's still illegal for them to not return Cy's bond money, and 2, if they had added Cy to the lease, he would have done a VCAT and found out much sooner about the rental arrears, and 3, the couple were the ones who changed the move-out date on Cy suddenly. In between attacking Cy, the couple said it was unfair for the advocate to take legal action if they didn't return Cy's money. No mention from them of how fair it was for them to take Cy's money, spend it, and then lie to him about it for months and refuse to return it. Funny that. They also pretended they didn't know what a disability advocate, demanding to know where she worked and calling her fraudulent. They messed the disability advocate around the same way they did to Cy, telling her they'd send money then never sending it. B. Colombo told the disability advocate they'd send Cy a payment on Friday. B. never sent any payment. Riley Pemberton offered to pay Cy back $50 a fortnight, and the advocate agreed to that. Riley sent one $50 payment, then no more, and Cy's advocate sent an email reminding them this was an agreement they had, but they ignored her and never replied. This is the scummiest thing I've ever witnessed. Between springing on C without discussion that they were moving out, leaving him scrambling in a housing crisis so they could move into their own house a bit earlier, lying to him about his bond money for months, telling him they were too stressed or too broke to do the VCAT for months, even when Cy, who is obviously stressed, broke, and very ill, was offering to pay for it and do the paperwork for them, telling him they'd send payments they never sent, then lying to the disability advocate about someone who, literally, is unable to speak for himself. It's hard to get much lower. We're going to go to the community legal advice again, and small claims court when Cy's health improves. He's currently receiving medical treatment. This case and the reports and saved conversations keep getting bounced from service to service, and we're already dealing with enough paperwork and emails with all the medical and daily living stuff for Cy. A case manager took over from the advocate this week, but we're unsure how much he can help. The couple are both the type of people who like to present themselves online as righteous and social justice-minded. Cy is mixed-race indigenous. B has a link on their Facebook to an indigenous charity called Pay the Rent, while taking rent and bond money from an indigenous person. The fucking irony. But unsurprising since B. Colombo believes that an indigenous person mowing the lawn, cleaning, vacuuming, and everything else Cy did is nothing. Anyway, thank you for watching.